Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 8 of Apple TV's Foundation, entitled The Missing Piece. Now, usually I try to figure out like what these titles are about. This one's kind of a tough one. I'm struggling to figure out who or what might be the missing piece from the title. And the best that I can kind of arrive at is that it's probably Gale. We find out that Harry did not take her ability to perceive the future into account. He has a really good line where he says something like, it could skew all of psychohistory. And I think that kind of means that Gale's probably the missing piece to making sure that the Foundation is ultimately successful. So that's kind of where I went with that. But let me know in the comments if you have a different idea of what the missing piece might be or who the missing piece might be. So as far as this episode goes, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought this was one of the stronger ones of the season. It's a far cry from at the beginning of the season where we are kind of saying that the episodes didn't have much going on and the show was moving very slow. And I kept saying, you have these big worlds, you got to build these worlds out, you got to build this foundation. And now that we have that built and we know who's who and what their plan is and where everything's going, they can now kind of focus a little bit more on moving this storyline along, and that's what they're doing. So we spent most of this episode in 3 locations. We spent the one with Brother Day walking the spiral, 2 with Gale and Harry traveling to Helicon, and 3 on the Invictus with Salvor, Farah, and all of the others who were aboard the Invictus. And I thought each of those storylines were really intriguing and compelling. I think the Invictus storyline is probably the weakest one. It's still, and by no means am I saying that it's bad or anything like that. I found it to be quite entertaining this week, but I'm just a lot more interested in the things that have a little bit more depth to them. Like the stuff going on with Brother Day, I found incredibly compelling this week. So that's kind of where I'm going to start talking about it, and then I'm going to talk about a couple other things. So at the end of the last episode, Brother Day mentioned that he was going to walk the spiral. And this week we immediately jump right into that. But we actually get like rules laid out for what happens on the spiral. So we know that Brother Day had to remove his body shield and the what they call nanobites from his from his blood. No food, no water, no rest. It's a 170-kilometer trek to a cave where once you get in that cave, you should be getting into this water that's in the cave that's surrounded by salt. And then you're supposed to have a vision. And if you make it back, then you tell the Zephyrs what your vision is and they interpret it for you. I had to know because, being in America, I don't know kilometers like that. So I looked it up. That's 105 miles. Brother Day's walking this barefoot in nothing but like a fucking scarf around his waist and shit. But and then we also learned that if you collapse and you fall down to one knee, then you can be helped up or something like that. You can continue. But if you drop to 2 knees, you either got to give up and die there, or you can be pulled off of the path and helped by someone else. So those are the general rules. We see Day go out on this trek, and he actually befriends someone else who's on it, which I found to be interesting because I thought, the whole purpose of this is for Day to essentially, I don't even know if Day thinks he has a soul, but he at least wants to give the perception that he does to the people on the Maiden. And I think that Brother Day is looking at it like, essentially I'm a god. Like I can walk this and it won't be that much of a problem. I don't think he was accounting for, losing his shield and the stuff from his blood or whatever, but I figure he looked at it lightly. And, he has a lot on the line here. If he can prove that he makes this and that he has a soul, it kind of deflates Zephyr Halima's entire premise about Empire not being worthy of ruling. So he's got a lot on the line here, and he befriends this guy, and I'm interested in this personal humanity kind of piece to it, because you see Day and this guy kind of like, I don't say build a relationship because it's only an hour-long episode, but he seems more human. He actually does seem like he has a soul, because this guy, at one point, this guy, first, Brother Day drops to 1 knee, and the other guy comes and helps him up. And, he says, we're almost there, and he motivates him. And then later, The other guy drops to both knees, and you could see the kind of like devastation in Brother Day. Like he actually was building some sort of kinship with this guy on the foundation. I love saying foundation, but it applies on the foundation of something that was really done for nefarious purposes. But now he's out there and he's built a kinship with this guy, and he offers to, pull the guy off the path so that he can be helped. And the guy just kind of like gives up and dies right there. And Brother Day makes it to the cave, and he immerses himself in this water, which was so clear that I didn't even realize it was water at first. Like it looked like the cave had like an upstairs and a downstairs. That's kind of what it looked like. But he immersed himself in this water, and when he gets back, he reports to the Zephyrs that he saw the salt rise from around the perimeter of the pool, and it formed a 3-petaled flower, and yada yada yada. Right now, the ultimate twist here was a bit foreshadowed, because during the trek with the pilgrim guy, he said that he knew somebody else who finished it, and that person saw the salt rise. And I don't know if he specified that it formed into a flower, but he saw that the salt rise and it formed into something or whatever. And then later we find out that Demerzel suspects that he's lying, because she has that same flower sitting at her, I'm gonna call it nightstand. I don't know if that's you call that kind of shit in 10,000 years or whatever, but he has like this the same flower that she got when she actually completed the spiral 11,000 years ago. And it flashes back briefly to him observing the flower from behind her in her room, and he's like, "No, I don't know what you're talking about. I never saw it." And I love how I already suspected that he didn't have a vision, because everything worked out too perfectly for him. He has a vision that essentially, kind of wows the Zephyrs, and everyone starts bowing to him and all this shit. And I'm like, okay, he probably didn't have a vision. He got some of the information from the guy on the walk. At the time, I didn't know about the flower that he might have seen from Demerzel, but we find out that all of this worked out really well for him. Like this could not have gone better, aside from like the really bad skin burning and all of that stuff. But he leaves, and he sends Demerzel back to kill Zephyr Halima, and it's so unnecessary. Like, you won, dude, you won. And he sends her back anyway, and she's very conflicted about it. And Halima points out the irony here is that Demerzel reveals that she's a robot, and the irony of this is that the robot is more conflicted about everything involving Day, and about this trip and walking the spiral and the lies and having to kill Halima. Like, she's more conflicted about this than Day is, when ironically the robot's the one that's not supposed to have a soul, and supposedly, and as far as all of these Zephyrs are concerned, Brother Day does. When the inverse appears to be the reality, she's very truly conflicted with what happened, and Day is very cold, very calloused, feels nothing, and is doing this shit just to do it. And I loved that flipping of what we not what we expect, but what the surface level interpretation, right? So the surface level is like, oh, she's the robot, she doesn't have the soul, and he just finished this trek. He looks like he does have a soul, and then the reality is the inverse. So I thought that was pretty cool. I liked the reveal of him not having the vision, the ultimate reveal of it, because it was pretty clear prior to this, but the ultimate reveal when they flash back and he's in the water seeing nothing. It comes right after Demerzel says something to the effect of like, not seeing anything, I wouldn't wish that on an enemy, or some kind of thing like that. Like, what a terrible thing it must be to get there and not see a vision, the emptiness of that. And I thought that was a pretty brutal blow to Brother Day, because he knows he didn't see shit, she knows he didn't see shit, but they're gonna sit there and lie to each other. And she just kind of goes, man, it'd be really fucked up to not see a vision, man. Man, that must suck. Like, really pouring salt on the wound, no pun intended. So I think that was far and away the best aspect of this episode was everything that happened with Brother Day. I thought that shit was great. Really great stuff there. I thought Demerzel did an incredible job showing conflict, showing pain, showing, struggling with this whole idea of not being able to betray or go against Brother Day's wishes despite a very, very clear desire to do so. I thought that shit was all really compelling. So really great work on that end of things. So I'm going to spend a little bit less time on the two places, but I wanted to talk about that first because I thought that was the best shit of the episode was everything that involved Brother Day and Demerzel and all that. So next we find Harry and Gale heading toward Helicon, and we find out that Helicon is the location of a second foundation, which was set up entirely in secret. And it's actually a brilliant plan because, like he said, Harry says something to the effect of the one on Terminus is meant to be visible. It's meant to have Imperial eyes on it. It's meant to essentially be under fire. It's almost like a decoy, actually, because you got to figure, like, over the course of all of these years where all of this, destruction and whatnot is supposed to play out, how does Terminus necessarily survive that? Like, all sorts of different things could happen. But to have a second foundation that's in secret, and he says even in secret from the Terminus location, to have that in place is actually a really brilliant idea. But Gale is fed up with Harry not telling her everything, which that always irritates me too. Like not in this specific case, but I don't like when characters like ask another character a question and the character just doesn't say anything. Like that bothers me because that doesn't happen in real life. Like, somebody's either going to say, I'm not going to tell you, or if they're quiet, the original person going to say, did you fucking hear me ask you a question? Like, you just stand there and ignore me. But, like, television movies does that all the time, where somebody asks a question and then the person just doesn't say anything, and they just pretend like that's how people act in real life. I don't know. But Harry refuses. That's a really weird tangent. Harry refuses to give Gale any more information, so Gale destroys a heat transfer system or something. I guess that's supposed to keep her... her body able to deal with the heat of entering Helicon's atmosphere. And she destroys that and essentially says, it's going to boil me alive going through that atmosphere. So either you let me go or you watch me burn alive. Figure it out. And eventually Harry lets her go. And she gets back in the cryopod that she left Trantor in. And she asks to go to Synnax. And it says, Synnax, 138 years away, and she says confirmed location. So Gale, who was asleep for 30 years, 30 something years, 34 years, something like that, on her way to the ship that Harry was on, is now about to take another 138-year nap. So we're probably not going to see Gale for a while, but I hear that the novels do this a lot, like jump forward in time by a significant amount. So who knows? Like when we see how the situation with the Invictus is resolved, the Gale-Harry situation seems to be resolved for the time being. The ship will probably make it to Helicon, and she's going to be floating off into space for 138 years, so that seems to be done. And Day's quest to have this Proxima fall in line with him because Halima's dead, Zephyr Galat, I think that's what it was, ends up becoming the new Proxima. We don't see that, but they say... So everything kind of seems to have wrapped up a little bit. We still have to figure what's happening with Dawn. I was right first time. Dawn and Dusk, that needs to be ironed out. But we got 2 episodes left, and there's not too much to deal with. So like a large jump forward in time is conceivable, but that would be such a jarring thing because like we spent all season getting used to these characters, and a 138-year time jump is probably going to be the end of virtually everyone that we see on the show, aside from maybe Demerzel, Dawn, Day, and Dusk, and this digital Harry. So I don't know. It could go in that direction. I'll be interested to see what happens next week because Terminus Invictus ends up making its random time jump anyway. Which it feels a little empty. And I think maybe that's why I found that plot line to be the least interesting, is because we go through. We spend the entirety of this episode on Invictus with them just trying to get to the controls of the ship and put in proper coordinates. And I'm not even going to go over all the different things that happen and all the things that come up, but to ultimately do all that, get there, and then to have it still do the random time jump anyway feels kind of empty. It makes it feel like filler. Like, why did we do any of this? Because we didn't learn too much. Like, we learned about, Salvor's, abilities or whatever. Well, we learned a little bit more about Salvor's abilities or whatever, but that was pretty much it. Like, we learned more about Farah, but, like, how much more do we need to learn about a revenge plot? It's a very basic plot device. Like, you did this to me, now I'm going to come back and get you. It's not too complicated. But we learn more and more about that. and I said it felt very empty. Like, what did we do all this for? Like, ultimately, we still end up doing the random time jump. Who knows where they're going to end up? Well, they're going to end up on Terminus somehow. I don't know, but they're going to end up on Terminus somehow because the Apple TV puts episode 9 up there and with the description, and it says Salvor returns to Terminus. And I'm like, okay, well, shit, I was supposed to have no idea where this thing's going to go. And it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to jump to Terminus. Maybe it jumps somewhere else and they end up back on Terminus. But, you know, the whole concept of Salvor's abilities revolve around kind of like, I guess, a mixture of luck and probability, and being able to kind of like, I guess, like manipulate and see that. I don't know, her abilities are kind of unclear, but I think that she might be able to have some sort of control over, and maybe not in a literal sense, but she might be able to have some sort of control with her ability to kind of like almost like manipulate probability to actually subconsciously or maybe consciously kind of direct Invictus to Terminus. So yeah, there wasn't too much going on there. It was interesting when I thought that she was going to sacrifice herself to actually be able to pilot the ship somewhere. Killing off Salvor would have been an interesting move to make, but looks like that's not going to happen. What I did find interesting about that plot line, well, it was kind of about that plot line. We still got to figure out what's going on with the vault on Terminus, because we have one fucking throwaway scene that led nowhere with Salvor's mom talking to one of the Anacreons who's guarding Terminus while everyone else is gone, and says that, you know, what we already knew, that the field around the vault was expanding, and that they had to skip town, and that's it. We don't see him anymore. So something's got to be resolved with this vault. We know Salvor is the only one unaffected by the field around it, so she's got to end up back on Terminus, I think. So I'm really interested to see how this vault is going to play into the rest of the show's storyline. So, I did have one more thought. Last week I said that Hugo's death was was underwhelming for that caliber of character, and it was underwhelming because he wasn't dead, which I also said in the video. I said I wouldn't be surprised if he's actually still alive, and he was. He sent out a distress call to Thespin, or is that I can't remember if Thespin is the name of the planet or the people who live there. Like, is I don't know, whatever. I feel like Thespins are the people and the planet something else, like Thespia or something like that. But he sends out a distress call, and they actually end up arriving and pointlessly bombarding the Invictus with you know, gunfire or whatever, and it still makes the random jump anyway. So like all of that was pointless too. So like I said, that Invictus, the shit on Invictus just really felt unnecessary this week, but it was still entertaining to watch. And then the stuff with Brother Day was so good that it counterbalances them, still makes for a really good episode. So 2 more left. I'll see you guys next week for episode 9. Until then, peace.